Well, good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, October 22nd, 2015, and another scintillating week in the car business. Um, this week we have a lot of topics to cover. I've got my friend Eric Tricot joining me in a minute. But let's face it, the big news, GM was high-fiving around the Rensen yesterday, I'm sure. Big profits, and of course, Wall Street responded accordingly. They're heroes and everything is rosy. The profits were all rooted in truck sales and China, which is fine. I mean, that's, Mary Barra and Dan, I'm the next chairman, Ammon's, MO right now. They say we're not going after market share, we're going after profits. And, in this era of cheap gas, selling trucks, GM's really good at it and they can make a lot of money at it. But, I waved a few red flags this week and about General Motors. And in my column, it's just, there's still a swirling maelstrom enveloping GM. And the reason I say that is because despite all the efforts by Mary Barra and Dan Ammon to project the new GM, I keep being reminded that this is very much the old GM in a new wrapper. This is a company that refuses to get serious about their marketing. It's the largest company in the world without a chief marketing officer. And, I've thought about this for a while. Let's face it, a good CMO is a disruptor to the culture. I don't think Mary Barra and Dan Ammon want a disruptor in the culture. And they don't want specifically to add another body to the executive suite who's going to be making over $1 million a year to tell them what they don't want to hear. And, when you look at what's going on in GM marketing right now, it's pretty dismal. I mean, find new roads means nothing, says nothing, goes nowhere for Chevrolet. It's just, they're beating a dead horse with it. They need a complete rethink. And without a CMO, they're not going to do it. They have Alan Beatty telling them, oh, everything's okay. It is what it is with Alan. The dealers don't like him. They despise him. And he's not, in my estimation, he's far from a marketing expert, and it shows. And then you have Cadillac, the dichotomy of Cadillac. They build these brilliant V-Series cars. And I mean brilliant. The true believers of General Motors really have it together. Mark Royce's team does fabulous work. They're great cars. They're every bit as competitive as their German competitors, if not more so. But the reality for Cadillac is that isn't going to save Cadillac. These niche, high-performance, enthusiast, rapturous vehicles just aren't going to cut it. The reality for Cadillac is they're selling Escalades. That's where the profits are. And they've got, and what do they have coming? Well, they have the CT6 coming, which is nice. It's restrained looking. And I don't think it's going to be, it's not going to be the answer. Meanwhile, the ATS and the CTS are bumbling along. They're not selling that well. And the crossovers that Cadillac has planned, the replacement for the SRX and a couple others, I mean, they're 8 months, 10 months away from impacting their bottom line. So, GM is just fumbling along. And then, of course, Buick. I mean, what can you say about Buick? This is a company that consistently does national dealer advertising, and they think that's acceptable. And meanwhile, I pointed to the Buick positioning line in my column, and the positioning line is, I don't know what to say about it. I mean, it's just, it can apply to anything. It's just Buick, just, let's face it. They say, It's an international modern luxury brand offering vehicles with sculpted designs, luxurious interiors, and thoughtful personal technologies, along with responsive yet efficient performance. Eric, any number of those, any number of vehicles right now can adopt those words, right?
Exactly. When that's a Buick, really. I mean, that's what you're coming up with. I mean, that's about as creative as saying, oh, it's the first insert thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
20 years ago when Pontiac used that for the first G6 or whatever that was, or 15 years ago. And it's funny because every time someone else comes out with that, it's so bland, you've seen 10 other people come out with it, including Toyota or Lexus, I think, tried that very briefly. And I'm like, really? No, I think you're spot on a lot of stuff. And it's not just the sort of the marketing and sales side of GM with a lot of those issues. I can speak a little bit to the accounting and financial side, and saying that there's a lot of question marks or people questioning Mary's leadership on a lot of things, including offshoring a lot of kind of important financial sections of the company where, okay, first they tried to move it to China. That didn't work. They've tried the Philippines, they've tried Jamaica, and now they're moving stuff to Mexico, including some SEC reporting items that are going to Mexico. This is all stuff that happened before the bankruptcy that caused all these restatements of earnings and things like that. And this is a pretty big effort to move a lot of this offshore. And I understand from a money saving standpoint why that is, but that has the potential to bite them in the ass very, very quickly. And that's something that Mary is pushing. So it's not just the marketing and sales side. It's all, as you say, it's all around the company. There's some interesting decisions of going back to the old ways of, and not necessarily the good old ways, it's the bad old ways of how GM did business. So it's a bit head scratching, but as you say, in this business, it's all about today, and it's all about, well, things are going well, so the old arrogance returns.
Yeah, I really think that there's much of the old GM attitude hard at work down at the Silver Silos, and getting back to Buick, I mean, basically they exist for the Chinese market, and they basically throw anything they can figure out up against the wall to see what sticks. And this advertising campaign that they keep pounding nationally is just, it's glorified tier 2 advertising, and their positioning statement means nothing. And they just keep careening from mediocrity to mediocrity as far as I'm concerned. And GMC seems to be emulating Cadillac. I mean, they've got a spot that looks like it was shot like the Cadillac campaign last spring in New York. And, GMC vehicles happen to be nice. I mean, they're nicely executed. They look nice, but, they need the campaign they're using now is just doesn't do anything. And again, they just refuse to acknowledge the fact that they need someone run at the tiller for all their marketing decisions. They don't have it. They refuse to believe they need it. They all think they're smart enough to get by without one. And I'm sure yesterday, in the midst of high-fiving in the RenCen, they said, see, we don't need a CMO. That crazy asshole auto extremist doesn't know what he's talking about, whatever. I don't care. And the other thing that's come to light about, and you brought up Mary, anyone who criticizes Mary Barra right now is going to be burned at the stake. So I'm just the guy to do it. Because, it's never bothered me before. Mary's naive about a lot of things. And that's not a knock on the experience she brings to the job or the actual job she's doing. I mean, but the reality is this is her first rodeo. So she doesn't know, and she doesn't understand the subtlety of this image wrangling stuff. I mean, some people are naturally gifted at it, and others just fumble around. Unfortunately, what she's got now is a GM PR staff who's trying to basically mold Mary Barra for the public. And they have 3 support PR firms working on this night and day. They're working on her image. They're trying to Twitter her way into hipness and Twitter GM's way into hipness. And I just think it's kind of pathetic. And, you know, GMPR, I don't know what to say about it. I mean, Tony Cervone, competent guy, knowledgeable guy, but I think he's kind of gone off track here. And, you know, Mary is doing a decent job, but is she the visionary that the company needs? Probably not, but she'll serve out her tenure. And then Dan, I'm the next chairman, just asked me, Ammon is just waiting in the wings and chomping at the bit. I would just like to see GM do better. I think they can do better, but we're looking at the old GM in many ways. And, you know, let's face it, if anyone thinks this cheap gas here is going to last, it won't. And, you know, frankly, the Detroit car companies, they're making all their profits on trucks, and, you know, they're overly dependent on it. And, you know, history repeats itself. This is a cyclical roller coaster business, goes up and down. And, you know, we're heading for a down period, even though everyone's, you know, I mean, everybody, the media is, oh, it's just wonderful. We're going to sell at 17 million indefinitely. It just doesn't work that way. I just feel Mary could do better. GMPR could do better. They're not doing it right now. And you know, trying to project hipness, an aura of hipness around Mary, and that she's got it switched on, it's just falling flat.
Yeah, and you know as well as anyone that the first rule about PR or image is that you have to be who you are. You can't fake it, because that's going to come out very quickly. And yeah, you definitely see, you occasionally will see little glimpses of like who Mary really is, and that she's a pretty reserved person. She's not necessarily that gregarious, outgoing personality. She's a little, I don't want to say calculating in a bad way, but that she thinks things through. And that's fine. And that can actually be a really good image to portray as a CEO, as someone who's thoughtful and puts thoughts into. They don't necessarily have to be this, you know, big, loud leader. But like you say, they're trying to portray her as not that because they're afraid that that's not a good image for a woman. Like, just let her be who she is, right? And then just build that up. Yeah.
So. I mean, you know, she's above criticism right now because, frankly, anyone who deigns to criticize the first woman CEO of a major American company, car company, is, you know, just on the wrong side of the law, so to speak. But you know, I'm gonna up my focus on this because she needs to do better. Tony Cervone needs to take a real hard look at what he's doing with this PR image wrangling, because I think it's weak. I think they've got people involved in trying to shape her image that they're not good. They're amateurs, and it shows. And they're going to have to really step it up here, because otherwise, when things start going bad in the business, things are going to start unraveling for her in a hurry. So another big news item yesterday, of course, was the Ferrari IPO. With, you know, we saw the great Sergio and Elkan up at, you know, the stock exchange. And, you know, I get why they're doing it. I mean, let's face it, FCA is, despite the gaudy sales numbers for Jeeps and trucks, they are operating on narrow margins, razor thin margins, and they're in a bad place, and they don't have any future technology to speak of. They need a partner desperately, and this Ferrari IPO buys them time. You know, and I see where the Ferrari family has ensured that they will keep control of Ferrari in perpetuity, and that's all well and good. But you know what? I just had a kind of a wispy notion yesterday that, you know, it really is the end. You know, it was just like, I almost felt like conjuring up Gordon Gekko. Greed is good. I tweeted that. I mean, now Ferrari is officially a commodity. I mean, yeah, they build, brilliant cars and all that, but there's just something that's it's very hollow. And you see the Ferrari worlds they've built, and it's just like, I don't know. I mean, they say they're going to keep it together, but yeah, I was sorry to see it actually.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it raised not quite $1 billion in cash, and like you said, that's desperately needed. And the valuation was $12 billion, I think, with what's held back. But yeah, the most troubling thing I saw out of that was, in years past, they've said, no, we want to keep ourselves exclusive and we're going to limit ourselves to this amount of production. And now that they're a public company, they can't do that. And they came out and said, yes, we're going to start building more cars. And the worst thing you can do for a luxury brand is to make it a commodity. Or, I mean, Ferrari will never be a true commodity, but maybe make it more common, right?
Yeah.
And yes, I understand that in China, there's 350 million people in the middle class, and that there's something in excess of like 2 million people whose net worths approach $500 million and higher. So yes, I mean, that it's kind of hard not to say, oh, look at all this. Well, if we increase our production, look at all these sales we can have. I get that, but at the same time, you kill who you are.
Yeah.
But
well, Sergio has gone on the record. They're selling 7,000 Ferraris a year. Yeah. He said we're going to go to 10,000, right. And and he said that will not affect Ferrari negatively just by increasing 3,000. But you know what? There's always a little bit of image erosion. It's slow and imperceptible at times, but then you wake up 5 years from now and it's just like, well, Ferraris aren't exactly like Camrys in Beijing, but there's an awful lot of them. So I don't know. I don't know where it leads. The other thing this week that I took note of is, very significant, I think. GM announced that the Bolt, the all-electric urban car, is heavily orchestrated by LG. And Mark Royce even admitted in a statement that, this is a new era for our suppliers. We basically haven't treated them right. And, we are, LG is our true partners in this. And, frankly, LG has such a good reputation. I think they should call it the Bolt LG because, they have, they're supplying, I don't know, it looks like to me about 60% of what's going on in that car.
Yeah, I mean, between batteries and electric motors and such, yeah, I mean, GM will provide the platform and the sheet metal and some of that engineering, but in some ways that's where we're going, and you wonder. I mean, in some ways that's what Tesla's betting on, right? I mean, with the whole battery factory, is that it's going to be in such demand that's he's going to try to corner the market a little bit. So, not that he's going to, but yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. It was a pretty interesting read about that yesterday, and you got to hope that it is a success on a couple different levels. One, that there is in some ways a commoditization, so that these are affordable to normal people. That it's not $100,000 cars. I mean, even the Leaf is $30,000, but at 80 miles, is it really practical? I mean, really, you need something that's 150 to 250 miles of range for it to be truly practical for a normal person to have and not have any kind of anxiety over. So, yeah, I mean, fingers crossed that that's going to be a good thing. But like you say, the world is quickly changing and really so in the automotive world.
Well, this electrification thing is going to really accelerate exponentially. I mean, much quicker. And I'm not so sure the automobile enthusiasts are really understanding of how transformational it's going to be. One little tidbit I noticed is, Formula E was, last year inaugural season. Everyone used the same power packages, and the cars are flown to the races, and the drivers change cars halfway through the race and all that. It was all pretty much sanitized and packaged. The cars didn't make really all that great a noise. I call it glorified slot car racing. But an interesting thing has happened over the off season, because Formula E starts in another 2 weeks. Some of the teams are redesigning their power packages, and it's pretty wide open. Formula E says you have to use the same basic chassis and body and wheelbase, all of that. But whatever else you want to do is fine, which that's kind of interesting to me. That's almost like the philosophy in the old Can-Am days. You can do whatever you want, basically. Right. So I was reading where the Mahindra group, their Formula E team, went to McLaren to improve all of their systems and tweak everything. And, they expect to be a second quicker this year. And they also said there's going to be a little more diversity in sound for these cars, which, it's interesting. That's all. I mean, this electrification thing is accelerating. Like I said, Formula E, I was sort of dismissive in my columns last year about it, but I'm not going to be this year. I'm going to give it another look. I like the idea that technical advancements is encouraged, and this marching orders, do whatever you want. This is kind of good. So that'll be interesting. We're about to be in the electric world.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to pay more attention to that this year, and the lessons you learn in racing, if done correctly, or accelerate what you do, and 3-4 times in a lab. So just because you're pushing it so hard, I guess the interesting thing will be is when they get to the point of they don't have to switch cars, but literally could do a quick battery swap somehow and do it safely, and
or they can
run the whole race on one charge. Yeah,
and go exactly. Racing speeds. And that was the idea when I came up with the Hydrogen Electric Racing Federation in 2007, and the manufacturers were very interested in it. And the whole idea was with these hydrogen electric fuel cell vehicles, you have some given problems: storage, cooling, range, refueling, all of that stuff. And if you race those vehicles, all of the problems associated with these fuel cell vehicles would be worked out quickly by the racers. And that's what we're seeing in Formula E. And you're right, when they can start racing these cars at racing speeds and not change cars, then we're getting somewhere. Then this electrification thing will become real commonplace, and people won't have to think about, well, I don't know where I'm going to charge, I can only go this far. It's going to be interesting. But the most interesting thing, and kudos to Joey Logano for winning that NASCAR last week at Kansas. But the coolest thing in the racing world this week was by far the MotoGP race at Phillip Island in Australia. It was even the riders said it was the greatest single MotoGP race of the modern era. And I know, Eric, you have a huge background in motorcycles, and it was just jaw-dropping. I've watched the broadcast twice, and I'm probably going to watch it again.
Yeah, it really truly was one of the great all-time races, and what made it great was that there were four riders up front battling, and maybe the battle for the lead wasn't the greatest through the whole race, although at the end there was but that battle for second through fourth all race long, and Andre Iannone, with like 3 laps left, had like one of the greatest dive passes ever, and just Rossi came to go underneath and pushed who was he battling with? Anyways, he pushed him wide, and then Iannone, with no room there, just dive bombs in and takes both spots. So yeah, it was just all race long. It was like that. And Phillip Island is one of the great natural road courses in the world. And we spent a lot of time talking about the difference of great natural road courses in America or North America, and Phillip Island is certainly one of those for Australia. They consider it, other than maybe Bathurst, their crown jewel, and like one of the crown jewels of the world, really. And it's a track that just leads itself to good racing, no matter if it's on 2 wheels or 4. And I would say make it a point to go watch that race, because even if you're not a motorcycle fan, but you're a fan of racing, you watch that, and you watch, as we said last week, just the beauty and the ballet of the riders and how they can control the machines and the influence that the rider has on the machine. It explains everything you need to know about why I consider motorcycle racing the best style of racing there is.
Yeah, the sheer artistry involved in what those guys do is it's almost beyond comprehension. Yeah, I would recommend, if you're into racing at all, or maybe if you're not, if you want to see this at its best, I would try to dig up a YouTube or whatever, watch it again, because it's worth it. So we're going to keep this moving this week, and I think we've covered a lot, and our initial episode last time was a little lengthy, but that's okay. We're just trying to get through this. So want to thank Eric again, and this is the High-Octane Truth. This is our second show, and I wish you all out there a good week, good weekend, and we'll be back next week. Eric, we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, man. Talk to you later, everybody. We'll see you next time.